If you're playing in a traditional ESPN, Yahoo, or Sleeper redraft league, we all know that your week can be determined by your kicker. It's important to get the right kicker, so we're going to discuss the top 12 kicker rankings in fantasy football for 2023. So I think the first thing that needs to be discussed here is if you are new to fantasy football, what might be a common misconception is that kickers on high-scoring offenses are usually the best ones to go after in fantasy football. You know, you want to go target someone like a Kansas City kicker, or Buffalo's kicker, or Philadelphia's kicker, right? That's typically the common misconception out there. And the reason it's a misconception is because when we are looking at last year's top 12 kickers that list on the screen right now, there were only 5 out of those 12 kickers that were on top 12 offenses in 2022. I mean, when you look at a team like Kansas City, their kicker was all the way down in the bottom half of fantasy kickers in 2022. Why is that? Because, well, they had more extra points than field goal attempts. And the reason why that matters is because extra point attempts only cost 1 point, whereas field goals, whether you make a 20, 30, 40, 50 yarder, that's 2, 3, 4, 5 points. So extra points is just a flat 1, and field goal attempts are really where it matters, man. So when you look at Kansas City's kicker, Philadelphia's kicker, Cincinnati's kicker last year, all of them in the back half of fantasy kickers in 2022. On the other hand, when we look at offenses that weren't as good, you could see offenses like New England's offense, the Jets offense, the Giants offense, the Panthers offense. Why do those kickers have so much success? Well, it's because typically they're in range to kick a field goal, and then they could get themselves a 50-yarder, even a 60-yarder maybe, and give you 5 or 6 points. So typically what we're shooting here with kickers is we want to get kickers with middle-of-the-pack offenses attached to them. Like I said, the goal here is to get more field goals and less touchdowns. It's a very fine line to walk here. And just to hammer home the importance of kickers in a fantasy redraft league, a traditional redraft league, like I said, on ESPN, Yahoo, NFL.com, Sleep Rap, you name it. If you are in a traditional redraft league, the importance of kickers cannot be understated because the top 12 kickers in 2022, all of them averaged over 8 fantasy points per game. Now, to put that in perspective, that's more than some wide receiver 3s on the market in drafts. That's more than some running back 2s in drafts. So let's go ahead and just get right into the top 12 guys right now. The first guy on the list, everybody knows him. It's Justin Tucker of the Baltimore Ravens. Justin Tucker is as consistent as it gets. If I've ever seen a Hall of Fame kicker in my life, Justin Tucker is it. 37 field goal made last year out of 43 attempts. 86% of his field goals were made, and he still got the leg strength. Longest field goal was 58 yards, so that's 5 points for you in fantasy football right there. Nearly perfect on extra points attempts, averaged 9.6 fantasy points per game. So clearly, he is still a very good kicker in this league and a good fantasy football kicker. And this offense, the good thing about it, I think is going to be actually middle of the pack. I don't think it's going to be as explosive as it used to be, especially if they're going to commit to a pass-first offense, which Lamar Jackson, I'm sorry, has never shown that he can do. I think they're very good enough and they have the talent enough to get them in the red zone and in place for Justin Tucker to kick a field goal. And that's why Justin Tucker is going to remain at the top here. At number 2, we've got Daniel Carlson of the Las Vegas Raiders, man, here. If there is any other kicker challenging Justin Tucker right now in the NFL, it's Daniel Carlson of the Las Vegas Raiders, man. Almost perfect on field goals made with a 91.9% field goals made in 2022. And he's got the leg that Tucker does too. Longest kick last year was 57 yards. So he's not lacking the leg. His offense is also mid as well. They're not an offense that's going to score a tremendous amount of points again this year, but with players like Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, they're going to get him into range. And whenever they score a touchdown, he's basically perfect. Missed only 1 extra point last year, averaged 9.5 fantasy points per game. Daniel Carlson is a very good kicker to get at the back of your draft. At number 3, we've got Younghoe Koo of the Atlanta Falcons right here. Younghoe Koo is a pretty consistent kicker as well. He had an 86.5% field goal made percentage, and his longest kick was 54 yards as well. So he's still right along there with the pack. Only missed 2 extra points last year and had 8.9 fantasy points per game. And this offense is going to improve with the young stars that they had. So Younghoe Koo is going to finish higher than he did last year because their players like Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London are going to put them in better position to be scoring points here. I still think he's going to have a large amount of field goal attempts this year, and that's going to be fantastic for Younghoe Koo to maintain this number 3 spot. And at number 4, I've got Greg Joseph of the Minnesota Vikings right now. So Greg Joseph actually had a little bit of a down year last year as opposed to the years before that. He's got the worst field goal made percentage of the guys we've listed so far at 78.8% field goals made, but this guy's got a freaking leg, man. He's got a cannon of a leg. He had 61-yard field goal last year as his long. The guy can freaking boom it, man. He's got a freaking leg. If he can regain some of that consistency that he had prior to that, this offense is going to be basically the same. They're going to not really improve too much, maybe a little bit with the addition of Jordan Addison, but I don't think it's going to be too much different for Minnesota this year. They're going to be in position to score just as much as they did last year. So Greg Joseph here, if he can regain the consistency, that's what I'm betting on here at number 4. And at number 5, I've got Gano of the New York Giants, man. So Gano, basically consistent as ever. 90.6% field goals made. Longest kick was 57 yards. Doesn't lack a leg. He's got plenty of leg. Basically perfect for extra points made. 2 extra points missed last year. 8.5 fantasy points per game. And this offense is going to be very middle of the pack again. They're going to be in position to score probably more than last year with the addition of Darren Waller and Jalen Hyatt. I think they will have some more firepower than they did last year. So if anything, I think Gano is actually going to be a better fantasy kicker this year than he was last year. At number 6, I've got Jason Myers of the Seattle Seahawks right here. So Jason Myers, as you can see, very almost perfect on field goal attempts. 91.9% field goals made last year. Longest kick was 56 yards, man, and only missed 1 extra point last year. Averaged 9.4 fantasy points per game. So he was very, very good last year. Here's the thing, I have him a little bit lower than his finish because I believe that offensively, I actually think Seattle is going to lose a step this year. Not because they don't have weapons. They absolutely have weapons. I just don't think that Geno Smith is going to be good enough again this year to maintain what he did last year, let alone build off of that. I think Geno played well in over his head last year, and I don't think that we're going to see that again. I think we're going to see Geno come back down to earth. Now, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to target Jackson Smith-Njigba or DK Metcalf in drafts. I'm not saying to do that. I think Geno Smith will definitely be good enough to have good fantasy performances for himself and those other guys, but as far as kicking goes and setting his kicker up for success, I just don't think it's going to be as often as it was last year. At number 7, I've got Tyler Bass of the Buffalo Bills. So obviously the Buffalo Bills have a top-tier offense, right? The good thing about Tyler Bass is that he's so consistent, and they have so many scoring opportunities that he finds himself in there because he doesn't really miss much. As you can see on the screen, only 4 missed field goals last year, only 2 extra point misses last year, and they had 50 extra points attempts. So that is really, really good when you get a guy who doesn't really miss much, and he averaged 8.6 fantasy points per game. This offense going to remain as steady as they are. They're going to continue to score plenty of points and put them in position, and Tyler Bass is also going to remain consistent as well. At number 8, we've got Mr. Grandfather of the NFL, Nick Folk of the New England Patriots, man. I get it. Nick Folk is getting older, man. He's definitely getting older, and he is definitely losing the leg. His longest kick last year was 54 yards. But this guy, still great as far as consistency goes. And New England's offense is they're so the definition of mid, guys. They are so mid offensively. They'll get you in position, they won't finish it, and that's where the field goal kickers come in and get a 40-yarder, a 50-yarder, a 35-yarder. That's where we get our fantasy points from with these kickers. So I like Nick Folk yet again in fantasy. And as I like Greg Surline at number 9 here with the New York Jets. So the thing about Greg Surline is last year, he wasn't as consistent. He definitely, over the past couple of years, has looked like he's lost a little bit of consistency. And that's why he's down here at 9. Long story short, there's 2 reasons he's still on this list. 1, he still got the leg. 60-yard field goal was his longest field goal last year. So the nickname Greg the Leg, that still lives on for sure. And the other thing is that this offense is going to be so much better. they're going to be so much better. They're going to give him so many more extra point attempts. And as you can see, his extra point attempts are the lowest out of the top 9. So that does matter to a point. Although we do want field goals more, it does matter to a point here. And that's the thing with Greg Surline, is he didn't have as many extra point attempts. It's all going to change this year. Aaron Rodgers going to change the offense, going to set up Greg Surline for such better points scored, with so many better opportunities to score points, not only from field goals, but also from extra points as well. Number 10, I've got Chris Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. So Chris Boswell, the thing about him is he missed 5 games last year, and he was actually playing injured. So his field goal percentage made was actually the lowest of his career. He made 71.4% of his field goals, but he still has the leg. 59 was his longest, and in fact, it was the longest of his career. But he's perfect on extra points attempts. The only guy on the list so far who's perfect at that. 18 out of 18. He is perfect at that. Averaged 8.1 fantasy points per game. So as you can see, when he played, he was still good. He just was injured a little bit, and that's why he had a little bit of a regression last year. But this offense is going to improve. There's no doubt about it. Kenny Pickett coming into his second year. George Pickett's coming into his second year. The offensive line improving. They're going to push the ball down the field more often and give Boswell more opportunities. Boswell stays healthy, he's definitely going to be a top 10 kicker this year in fantasy football. And number 11, I've got Riley Patterson of the Detroit Lions, man. Young guy, was really good for them when he was given the opportunity last year. Kicked a 53 long field goal, so not a ton of leg, but he was still very consistent, especially with extra points made. Only missed 1 extra point right now. 8.2 fantasy points per game last year. This offense improves, there's no doubt about it, with the addition of Jahmyr Gibbs. When they get Jameson Williams back, the improvements of the offensive line, they're going to come to fruition this year for Detroit. And this 23-year-old kicker is definitely going to improve off of what he did last year. And at number 12, I've got Eddie Panero of the Carolina Panthers. So Eddie Panero is very consistent. Very, very consistent guy. Only missed 4 kicks last year with extra points and field goals combined. He's a very consistent guy. 94.3% field goals made last year. 54 was his long. Just a steady Eddie type of guy. He is steady Eddie. 8.6 fantasy points per game. This offense is going to improve with Bryce Young. If you're looking to round out your roster by finding out who the top 12 fantasy defenses are in 2023, click on this video right here.